But before I kick the session off, um, let me just do a quick round of introduction for myself again. So my name is Priyesh Wag, and I've recently promoted to practice lead at CloudFronts in Mumbai. I'm also a Microsoft Business Applications MVP, and that's my Twitter handle and my blog as well. So I do keep posting about Dynamics 365, Power Platform. Into using the product. And yeah, that's my introduction again. So I'll kick the session off today, because this could be absolutely new to some of you or most of you, I would say. I will just walk you through what project operations is, how you can get started. You can of course create a trial and everything, but what this would need is having some knowledge on Dynamics 365 applications. You might have been having some hands-on experience on different products like sales or field service or customer service. So similarly, project operations 2 is a similar offering. And I will be walking you through what are the different types of deployment in today's session. How do we go about having the executing the sales cycle, and also what are the project management aspects, and the allocation aspects or the schedule board aspects or time entry aspects of this, and how you can get till the end where it stops at the invoicing piece. So all the way from sales to billing, and all the included tables or included entities with them, that is a lead, an opportunity, a quote, and then there are quote lines and everything, all that entities that are tied together. Then how you end up creating your project, how you make a resource, book time on the project, and eventually that time is then billed to the customer in an invoice. So we'll be looking at that on a very high level. This is absolutely an introductory session, although there will be some bits and pieces of some advanced concepts, but I'll try to give out as much information while showing this demo as possible, so that at least functionally you can get a hang of things of how things happen in project operations all the way from sales to billing. So first we'll talk about the three deployments type. Then I'll walk you through the sales process, and finally we can do some Q&A based on how much time we'll have left, and in which I'll also cover what are the licensing and how do you go about upgrading from PSA to project operations, because several customers are who are already using PSA. There is a roadmap defined by Microsoft, and currently this year is a huge time for rolling out in three different phases. So we are in the middle of the first phase, and how we can go about that. So I'll also talk about that towards the end. So let me first just cover a bit of theoretical part here, just to understand the project operations of how you can deploy it. So there are three types of deployment for project operations. So basically the licensing is the same, but the type of deployment is followed by a set of questionnaire which is asked when you sign up for a free trial. So of course project operations is there's a free trial available just like you would sign up for any other service. So you can do that. You can create a trial, and it will ask you a set of questions based on which it will recommend the kind of deployment you want to do. And now, because this is it could be a lot to cover in this 1 hour, so this session really just covers the project operations light type of deployment, the first type of deployment that I mentioned, all the way from deal to pro forma. That's what I'm going to cover today in the session. But there are few more. There are two other types of deployments as well. The other is called as resource or non-stocked scenario, and the third one is called as stocked and production order scenarios. So the stocked and production order scenarios, these type of deployments take your invoices all the way from project operations, that is customer engagement side of apps, to finance and operations using dual write. So there's a whole involvement of lifecycle services and setting that up in the full end-to-end deployment of project operations. But of course, we won't be covering that. Maybe in the future, in the near future, I will come up with a session, maybe a longer session where I can also show that. But today we will be covering the light type of deployment where you start your project operations trial, get the few initial things up and running right away, and you can create a journey from lead to an invoice right away based on a time entry or a time and material types of billing. So of course I'll be throwing out information while I show you the demo. So let's get started with the first type of deployment, and I already have an environment created. I'll just walk you through what I have already set up. I will though again show you where these things are. But what I've already set up after I created the trial is I've set up the price list, the sales and the cost price list. Then I've also set up a couple of bookable resources. Bookable resources meaning the actual resources who are going to end up working on the project. And for them to be able to efficiently allocate and book their time, I've set their work hours and invoice frequency on the project. So let me take you to my environment. So let's run a time and material scenario in the scenario till pro forma invoicing. So if anyone is new in the project operations or project service automations phase, PSA or project operations product, there are two types of projects you can run. Let's say you're a professional services organization and you run two types of projects. So one is a fixed bid, meaning the cost of your project it is fixed, and you every billing frequency you're going to bill the customer for a fixed amount of invoice. And time and material, it's an industry standard term where you know that whatever time your resources have put in on the project, those will be billed. So in my previous project operations session, I've run scenarios for fixed bid or fixed price project, but today we'll cover based on um, time and material type of project. So let me, go about by creating a lead first. Okay, just give me a moment. All right. So I'm just opening up a new form. Before you get to this, if you're confused of where does this come from, if you click on the list of apps, so if you start a project operations trial, or if you have a project operations environment setup along with the other apps, project operations is also just another app like that. So when you go into project operations, you will have all the entities and the tables listed out. And so because it's the beginning of the sales cycle, you can navigate to the sales side of things, and you have all these entities like leads, opportunities, quotes, contracts. So this is pretty much the sequence right away. So let me start off by creating a lead, because first let's start with creating a leads. Let's call an imaginary company as ABC company, and what we are selling them as a professional services company is Dynamics 365 implementation, to keep things short. Um, so I have to switch the type to work based, because it will be based on the efforts. So the type of in project operations or in field service, you have to select the type of lead. So here we are, since this is actual number of hours that we are putting in, so I'm selecting the type as work based. Uh, Let me put John Smith, very standard example again, and let me just put the name of the company, and we'll just go about creating the lead, right? So, okay, you've put some basic information, you've entered the lead, assuming you have put all the details as well, done your due diligence. The next thing is everything looks good, and you can just qualify the lead in order to create a opportunity. Now, because we selected the type as work-based in project operations lead, it will create the opportunity of also in the context of project operations. So, everything that will follow after that, or if some of you are technical folks here, or in the development space of Dynamics 365 CRM, it will kind of show all the right tabs, and it will enable all the right JavaScript functions to show you whatever is in context of project operations right away. So I've created an opportunity. So right away we just created a lead, we just qualified it into an opportunity which is of type project, right? So but if you have already used, if you're already used to the sales side of things, you would notice, oh, what's the contracting unit here, oh, what's the product price list here, what are all these things. So let me quickly give you a brief introduction of what these are. So contracting unit is kind of a business unit. If you're used to D365 sales, it holds your price lists, and it holds your sales and cost price list, so that the price lists you end up selecting are in this contracting unit. So it's a, for now, for basic, for absolute simplicity, it's a placeholder of everything that is drilling down in project operations. So contracting unit meaning the geographical location of your company, right? You let's say if you're in US, so that is probably one of the main contracting units. Then there could be several others in other regions as well. So that's how you go about it. Assuming, as I showed in my slide, that I have already set up the price list. So under a contracting unit, a cost price list gets attached because of course the resources are going to be from this contracting unit. And then I have a separate price list called as sales price list, which is defaulted here on the product price list chart. Furthermore, there is also a project price list. Project and product price list, I'll just walk through the definitions shortly. So let's say my basic opportunity is also ready. I'm just not doing anything right away. If I want, I can just fill the rest of the information, but that's fine. We'll just leave it here. And we are also not adding anything on the opportunity lines, because if I add some opportunity lines right away, it will kind of confuse. But standard definition, if you're again, I keep repeating that if you're again used to working in D365 sales, whatever line items you create in opportunity, and you know they get converted, they get passed on to quote as well, right? So I'm going to just leave this opportunity here, and I'm going to straight away go ahead and create the first quote for the customer. So let me just put the budget here, so that for salespeople, it's important that we see some budget. Um, all right. Just so that it has some value right away. All right. So I'm going to just go ahead and create a new quote. I just press on the new quote button, and it will of course take me to a quote. We are already on the third entity here. And from here, where things will start to get a little complicated, or it will be too much. So of course, keep posting your questions in the chat, and I will of course check them back post this session. So our quote is ready here. This is just like a sales code, but again, there are a lot of things here. Of course, I won't be covering all of those, but just to give you the fundamental working of the code in context of project operations. In project operations, there are few new features called as not to exceed limit, and as it suggests, it's quite self-explanatory that whatever you end up billing the customer while working on this code, make sure you don't surpass a certain number of um, cost, right? So because for this demo, I'm also going to be showing how this will look. Let me keep a not to exceed limit of just 1,000, right? Of course, our budget is quite wide, but just to show you in demo, and to save my time to not enter too many time entries for the project, I've just put $1,000 as the not to exceed limit. All right. Now, other important thing is I need to set the requested delivery date. So I'll just put it somewhere in the future at the end of August. This is required to define what will be the end duration of the quotation or the project that you're going to propose. So that will be the end date. The start date is something I'll just get to in a moment. So I've put these two things. Not to exceed limit was not in the previous version, that is PSA, and along with that, there in the older project service automation or PSA, there was also something that is called as split billing. So it was not there. So here, in case if there are multiple parties involved, you can of course add more quote customers, and the bill could be split between the two. Let's say the subsidiary and the parent company. That could be one of the scenarios. So again, not gonna get into the nitty gritty of these things, but again, this is a nice to know feature here that you have split billing in project operations exclusively. Coming back to summary, it says that you don't have a project price list yet. So I will add a project price list right away, because I'm using the two standard price lists that I have already set up. um, I will use US sales price list, I think. Yes. So this is my sales price list. I'm just adding this price list to the code. Again, there are several things I could do, but I'm just keeping it very simple for now. I've added a project price list, and if you refresh, the message will go away. because it expects us to tag some price list. It won't default anything right away, but I just tagged a project price list to it. It's just my standard sales price list, which has my if I just if I quickly go into the price list just to show what we're talking about is uh, in a price list in role prices, meaning because it's a professional services company, people are billed on hours. If I sort from so for the resourcing unit, we had selected on the opportunity, remember? So for those resourcing unit or those, holding companies, there are two roles, project manager and developer. So I'm just, assigning them some hourly rates here. So these are sales price lists. So this is going to be billed to the customer based on these prices. And of course, the costs are lower, and that is for internal review. So again, going back, so this is just my price list setup, just so that you have some visibility there. Now my just the shell of my code is ready. Again, to summarize, I have put some exceed limit of 1,000 that don't exceed any billing about $1,000, and I've also set the end date. But the start of this lies on where you want to actually start billing. So let me start by defining my first quote line, because you can't just give a blank quote. You have to have the line items in them. Um, so one of the first quote line is, because I'm offering professional services, it's a Dynamics 365 implementation. I will just say ABC D365 implementation services. Okay. And now here comes the important part. One is the billing method. So as I talked that, because we are doing project operations, there are two types of billing methods: time and material, meaning all the time entries that the resources are going to end up putting on the project. Those will be considered, and fixed prices, that if you want to charge them by a fixed amount, and then the invoices are divided into equal amounts, or you can just change them up. Those are the two types. So let's go with time and material so that I can show you how the time entries, you know bills are also included when you create an invoice. So now all these are, I don't want to include any expenses. I don't want to have any materials on it. I'm not also going to include any flat fee. So I'll just keep all this no and just include the time in this kind of quote line, right? I'll just put it 5,000. uh, I'll just save this right away first. And what I'm going to do first is already just create a project and tag, so that I don't forget right away. I can, of course, ideal way is to create a project later on once you have a contract and everything in place, but let me just tag things right away. So I'll just create a new project here. So you can just quickly create a project and keep it aside, so that we don't go about navigating a lot of places. So ABCD 365 project, just to keep our distinction clear between what's the name of the line and the project. Estimated start date. Let me just start it somewhere in the past. uh, 500 hours something. Um, so again, I'm just creating a shell of the project, and I've just tagged this project to this code line again. Now, my I'm again still in the process of building this code line. I haven't finished yet, because you want to define how the bills or how the invoices will be generated. And remember, from the code I showed what should be the end date of the code, or when are you planning to deliver. That date I had put, and what I'm putting here is when should it start. So here it comes where the billing should be started. So just to show you something from the past as well, I'm just keeping it as 6th June, and how frequently the invoices should be generated. So again, this is a part of the metadata setup, that you can define your own invoice frequency. It could be a month, a week, once a month, twice a month, could be anything. So again, there are flexible options you can create of your own. Let me do bi-monthly, so that we see more and more schedules. Let me save this. Now, I have defined between this and this date, the invoices should be generated. But for that, I need to first, because after I entered this, I need to first now create a invoice schedule. So I'll just click on the generate invoice schedule buttons, and it will generate the list of whatever falls within the bi-monthly frequency, whatever date there is. Uh, my frequencies will be set off. What the transaction cutoff date denotes is which time entries should be considered before the dates which are mentioned here and which are not yet billed, right? So of course, that's the reason I've kept it at 26, so that I can do some time entries in the past, and those are comfortably considered. If I do some time into in the future, those might not end up being on the invoice we're gonna create. So I've created my project here. I have defined my code line. I've also added an invoice schedule, right? Uh, Again, in project operations, you can also build specific number of tasks from the project. But again, that's again a lengthier topic to cover. But again, I promise I'll post things or how the workings of that, and all that can tie to this demo today. So in future, I'll also be posting things about how you can include project tasks that are just for this code. So for now, I'll leave it blank. So here's my code line. I've defined it. I'll just save everything and my code is ready here. All right. Not adding another code line. So I'm going to be having a ABCD365 project and I'm going to be having a time material type on it. Right. So let me just, close this code as one. What it will do is it will create a project contract for me. Ideally, a project after you create a project contract, it's best to create a project and then tie it. But then of course you wouldn't want to come back and confuse yourself of tying the project to the code. So that's why I created the project right away on the code line. So what's happening right now is project contract is being created. We already have a project on it. Um, Now, assuming that the project has started, right? We're starting working on the project right away. Um, and there are resources. Now, just to let you know, because this is a trial version here, uh, I have only one license because there's only one license that you get, unlike 25 license in other kind of 365 sales trials. So this is I'm just going to be entering time myself and also going to approve it myself and create the invoice myself. So yeah, so that's what it is. And so our contract or order is created. So for those who don't know, the sales order entity or the order entity is actually project contracts and project operations or PSA. Again, new concept in or a new feature in project operations is advances and retainers types of billing. This was not present in PSA before, but it's here in project operations. There's also one of the latest features which I still haven't honestly tried on is the subcontracting in PSA project operations, but that is also one of the most talked about feature also. So yeah, so here is our contract. If you're wondering what happened to the project we created, let's leave the contract right here. Let me just duplicate this, and I'll just come back here again. So our contract is there. Let me go to the project. So again, from the order, project will be here. And let's just go inside the project. Let's do a quick revision of what project holds today and what we're gonna do again. So for whoever of you have already used PSA in the past, again, project is where you add your resource to it, add your resources to the project. Then you also define now who's gonna be working on what kind of tasks and all those things, right? So again, so we in your project. Entity or project, you have it ties to several other entities. Now, because I opened this for the first time, there was a pop-up that it logged into project for the web. So this is again this is again tying to the actual project that was before. So I haven't really set this up. Staking client. Okay. All right. So tasks is where you create your project tasks. You put efforts on it, when it should start, when it should end, which resources should be on the tasks and all. Those can be put in. Again, if there are several other resources here, those can be tied as well in the team tab. So again, team is project team, which was in PSA. They're just calling it teams here. So because I just created a project and there's just one resource, only one will show up, but I can add more resources. And just having one license of course won't stop me, because the type of resources or bookable resources you can create are already of type contact as well. So let's say even if I just for the sake of the structure, let's add another resource of type contact. So bookable resource, it will tie to the bookable resource entity. And let me just pick the first resource, Ethan, here. And whatever's by default set will pop up, and I will just not allocate right away. And I'll just set the role. I think it's a developer. Yeah. So I'll set the developer. Yep. And I'll just save and close. So likewise, there are several resources on the project, but there's an important aspect here. If I open the one of the team members for this project, if this team member is supposed to be the approver on any kind of time entries or expense entries, you can set that. There could be multiple approvers as well. That is also fine. So if you open up the project team member type of record, if the project approver is set to yes, like if I am the approver and if my team members are doing any time entries on this project, I would be authorized to approve or reject those time entries or expense entries, when it comes to that stage. So of course, after this, what we're going to do is we're just going to just quickly look at the allocation aspect on the schedule, but and then we're going to quickly do time entries. So I will be the one who will approve. If I had set this to no, and if so, the time entries won't appear um, on the approvals table. So again, approvals is a different entity. These are all different entities that your data will flow through from allocations to doing time entries and everything, right? So yeah, so that's the project aspect side of things. There are several other things here. What we are going to come back to in a short while is the actuals. So actuals meaning all the time entries that the resources have done, what should be the actuals be billed at. So actuals are the items that will eventually end up on the invoice itself, right? So again, we'll come back on this part here on the project, and let me again do a duplicate. Let the order be here, let the project be here, and again I'm on the project. So from here we go to the schedule board. So let's say your project is set. Now you want to allocate resources on them, right? Who should be working on those projects? From what to what time they should be working, how many hours on the project or any other projects you might have, right? So again, this is one of the quite popular scheduling mechanisms. In this is commonly between project operations and field service. So you have the similar view and everything. All the sample data is in there as well. So let it load. There is a new schedule board as well, which I have not, enabled right away. I don't know if I can enable that on the project operation side, but there's an enhanced schedule board as well. So Ethan was one of the resources I added. So let me allocate this resource last week, right? We'll just keep things in the past just so that we don't end up having problems in adding them to the invoice. So this is the project. I'll select the project and I'll just allocate this resource for on this project on 14 June for 6 hours. And yeah, I want to do it in the past. And on 16th, let me just do it for 2 hours. Um, the reason why I'm allocating two different things is because there will be two different types of time entries we will be doing, and I'll show you why I'm doing that. So let's do 2 hours here. Yes. So Ethan is also to work on this project for 6 and 2 hours last week, right? So let's assume we are in this week and now he has to do his time entries, right? Based on what allocations he has. So of course, for him under his login, he will go to time entries. Again, this is same as what it was in PSA. So all the resources are supposed to enter their own time. Um, and let's go to the last week. So now because I again to repeat, because I have allocated that resource and I don't have a license, I won't be able to pull in the resources from the bookings. I had to allocate myself, but this is just one of the old features where you can directly pull your bookings from the schedule board, whichever you were allocated on. So assuming that we are doing this and assuming I'm that resource, I'm Ethan here. So again, I will do my time entries. So let me do two time entries on the project. So one I will do for 2 hours. The project is ABC. And as a project manager role, that's fine. Initial meetings. the stakeholders, right? And I'll just, put the same in comments. And let me also do one on the 16th, right? And just do 6 hours here. It's fine. Uh, uh, 6 hours. I'll just put the same comments. Um, I'll just call it, I'll just put a number 2 here, right? Just so we are able to identify while approving. So I'm doing 2 time entries, 6 hours and 2 hours. Uh, so now let me try to submit the 6 hours time entry. I'll show you why I'm doing this right away. So if I submit 6 hours time entry, um, the billing amount, I think it will exceed the $1,000 limit we had put on the not to exceed limit on the quote, right? Again, we'll revise all of this again once we are done with the cycle. But just to reiterate, uh, now in approvals, let's say I'm the approver of the project and I see that, oh, someone has done a time entry for 6 hours and it's going to be, it's going above the limit, then the not to exceed validation status will be in fail. So meaning, oh, now I cannot just approve it right away. There will be issues. So, or even if I approve, it will get approved here, but on the project, it will fail on the actuals. But let me not take it that far because that would be a bit confusing. Um, so I'll just keep it like that. Again, I'll go to time entries and I will approve the other 2 hours that I had. Again, this is exclusive to project operations. This feature was not present in the past PSA version. So I'll just submit this couple of hours and let's see if it passes the not to exceed limit test. So again, coming back to the approvals, it passed. So 2 hours are fine. They're not exceeding the 1,000 limit. So let's leave the one that will not go. Let's leave it here and let me just approve this time to this time entry so that, yeah, it looks good. 2 hours are fine. Uh, I have just approved it. And what happens behind the scenes is there are a few sets of records. Those get created. Journal entries are created and journal lines is one of the types. Those are created. Then actual records are also created. And now where are those actual records actually? That's the reason I've kept the project here. So if you go into, I just showed, just before coming here is coming to the project, that if you go to actuals under a project, whatever was approved will show up in the actuals list. So the 2 hours, which is amounting to $360, those will come here. Let's see what happens when we approve the ones that are not going to go through. Let me just approve this as well. Uh, all right, so I just approved both time entries, knowing that there's a not to exceed limit, just to show that it will allow you to do that. Again, going back to the project and just doing a refresh here. The other one, which was for 6 hours, that will not go through because it is exceeding the $1,000 limit right away. And that's the reason the validation had failed back there, right? So we're not gonna touch this. We'll just keep it as is. Um, so let me click on the unbilled sales. So the time entries that should end up on the invoice for the customer are of transaction type unbilled sales. This is the cost to the company itself. That's why the rates are less. And this comes from the cost price list that I have tied to the contracting unit, which was on the opportunity or which came all the way from the opportunity. So again, not going to do anything to that, but all the unbilled type of actuals, we're going to select them and we're just going to say that these are ready to invoice. So I just clicked on ready to invoice. It doesn't give a very good visual cue right away, but it will just do a refresh and it's ready to be invoiced. Just to cross check, maybe you can change this view and add some fields here just to show to make sure that they have been readied. So this billing status will be ready to invoice, right? Things looks good here. I have readied one time entry worth of 2 hours ready to be billed to the customer from the project. Now what will happen is Let's go here and let's go to the sales side of things, because again, we have to carry things forward from the project contract side. And again, if I go to the project contracts here, this is my contract. Now, um, there is a main difference between having fixed type of project and also having time and materials type of billing. So I'll just verbally walk you through what those are, because this is a time and entry, this is time and billing type of project that we are doing. um, I can go into the contract lines. I need to open this up, and I don't have to necessarily do anything right here, but I can just check uh, the schedule, right? So it says that the invoice, has not run yet. So this is the schedule ideally. And for the fixed price, you will see a milestone list. So again, there's a different tab. It's hidden because of the type of um, code line is, sorry, contract line is of type time and material, but for fixed bid, it will be a milestone. So again, it will have its own. In terms of milestone, what I had to do was I had to pick those and ready those, include the milestone to say yes, because it was a fixed type. But now, because here this works off of a cutoff date, I don't have to specifically do anything or fiddle anything right here. So again, I can go to the contract, um, believing that everything looks correct. I have approved the time entry that I supposed to approve, and I will create an invoice out of this. Now, my invoice that is created is supposed to take in the 2 hours into consideration and bill that amount. So now you're at the final entity, or you're at the final, you know, end of running the deal to pro forma cycle, and $360 worth of 2 hours. 180 was for the project manager role. So 180 into 2, yeah, 360. So that got billed right away, right? Uh, and this is where you go from all the way from lead to opportunity to quote to creating a contract, tying the project onto the contract, adding the resources on the project, allocating those resources on the project, those resources then doing the time entries or any expense entries they might have, a project approver approving those time entries or expense entries, or the billing administrator or whoever has, probably the project manager who has the right on the project, can come in and mark the actuals as ready to invoice. He can select which all invoices, which all actuals should be ready to invoice, which one should not, meaning in simple ways, which should be included and which should not be, and the contract then going to a contract and then creating an invoice. And the invoice is again created here. So let's, here we have completed the deal to pro forma cycle completely. Now, what this doesn't has is, this doesn't have all the complex taxations. So you do have tax and everything, but deal to pro forma, meaning this is a pro forma invoice. This doesn't have a customer facing invoice yet. So, the extended deployment of project operations, that is all the way to going into the accounting system. That's where the actual taxation and calculations happen. And that's where your customer facing invoice, which is enriched with all the taxation information, is filled up, and then it can come back or sync back. So all that integration exists, provided by project operations, of course, which are not part of this demo, but that's what happens. So this is a pro forma invoice of $360. So let's go back to our contract. Let's note what happened on the contract side of things. Uh, all right. Now, because these are roll up field, we have to manually calculate. Nothing will happen here. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, the 360 degrees and the spent amount, $360, and the spent amount was 0. So, I think based on your not to exceed limit, you will see these numbers keep on changing and seeing how much amount is remaining. So let me do a refresh, I think. Yeah. So, so this is what changed, that it keeps a track of how much of the billing has been done. Let's, again, there's an important part where we can look at, and that is the contract lines. So if you go to the contract lines on the contract or order, and if you look at the invoice schedule, because we created the invoice, again, it's supposed to come here and say invoice uh, created, but I think it has not updated yet. Oh yeah, it's supposed to say run and failed. That part, my bad. That part is for fixed price type of billing, where it says that the invoice has been the invoice schedule has run once, right? So that is where the entire cycle takes place. Let's go back and confirm that invoice again. I'll go to the contract or the order, and because these are child entities, so invoices should be here. ABC. Yeah, this was the invoice. Yeah. So let me just confirm the invoice. So the invoice is now confirmed. Let's also mark the invoice as paid, so that you're done here, right? Of course, you will be adding all the taxation information and everything, but just let's close the loop on invoicing entirely again, right? So I showed you functionally from all the way from um, sales to billing, but let's look at some of the aspects that you saw along the way. Let me recap a few things I didn't talk about to get to the end, is about the metadata setup. So one of the important aspects is what all is needed to set all these things up. Of course, I'll be covering mostly around the contracting unit and the price lists, just to have the bare minimum things working. But then again, there are several lot of things. There are different roles. Should they be chargeable or should they be not chargeable? Are there any other type of licensing that you are involved that should have been a part of the product-based licensing or not? So we'll just quickly do a rundown of the bare minimum things that I set for this demo, right? So let me go to the contract again. All right. So because we marked the invoice as paid, the spent amount got updated to 360. Um, Again, I'm not sure. I've not tried this before, but I want to see if the committed amount is again back. Yeah. So because our invoice was generated but not marked as paid, it was still in the committed amount section. The amount gets transferred to the spent amount category is only when you actually recognize that revenue, when you have realized that revenue, right? So marking an invoice as paid will be actual, the amount that is spent, right? Because from customer's end, it's the amount that they've spent, and yeah. So that whatever the remaining amount is, it would be the same. Let me do a refresh. Yeah, it would be the same because again, you have not built anything or added anything else. So let me also do a quick run of what happened to the field. And I think this will give you an error if you try to approve this because this is already exceeding the limit. So if I click on ready to invoice, one or more selected transactions has not to exceed limit field, and hence they can't be marked as ready to invoice. So the first, it didn't stop us at the project, the approval stage, that okay, this is the time entry that is supposed to exceed the not to exceed limit, but I'll still approve it and then let others decide. But again, the actual record or the actuals record, this it won't let you mark that as ready to invoice, and that's where the validation it will stop. In case if you change anything in the not to exceed limit, it will kind of reevaluate and change this validation. But again, I've not tried this yet, so I can't be sure on this. Uh, so these are some of the new features that are in project operations. Let me go to the setup side of things. One of the most important things are the resources, which I talked about now because I am just one single user. I just had one license on the trial. My type of user is of type user. So if I just filter by a user, it would just show me this is the user. But if I just did just everyone else I had added was of type contact. So these bookable resources are the ones who are shown on the schedule board. And for each of these bookable resource, what happens is you set their working hours. Like when is this resource supposed to be working? So let's say again, this doesn't happen inside bookable resource record, but you just have to select on the grid and you have to show the working hours. Or if you already have some work hour templates, which is again not covered in this demo, but work hour templates is, let's say your company is offering standard 8 to 5 work timings. Those can be set as work hour templates, and those can be assigned to resources in a set calendar button. And I think the default one exists here. Uh, yeah, the default work template applies. So standard 9 to 5 will be applied. But if you have your own, that will be applied. Let's say someone is in the night shift and you have different working hours for them, those need to be assigned. So what happens with this is when you want to schedule the resources on the schedule board, uh, you can see when the resource is available versus when they're not, so that you don't schedule those resources outside of their working hours. So because I had set, I think the default one, yeah, I think I had set for all. So the default working template says that don't work on Saturdays and Sundays. And I think this is the 8 hour work day. Um, and I'll also just quickly talk about what are the types of booking methods here. So when you allocate some resources, you just front load hours, that whatever, if they're starting from zero, just fill 10 hours. Uh, just fill 10 hours. So whatever is their capacity, if their capacity here is 8, it will fill 8 here. And if the capacity exceeds, it will push the 2 hours over to the next day. So that's what the front load does. Full capacity, meaning whatever their remaining time is for the selected days, everything gets allocated for the selected project. Um, and yeah, percentage is 50% of the resource capacity. Evenly distribute is when you kind of, select, uh, you know, 2 hours each, you can book them and so on, right? um, yeah, so yeah, 2 hours, one each. So these are one of some of the standard ways you can allocate your resources on, and that's where the resource allocation thing comes in. This is where I had set the work hours for, so that if I hadn't set the work hours, it would have shown me 24 hours for default resources. So these are some of the initial setups you had to do. Again, the most important types of setups are in settings, in organization units. This was the very first, as a recap, this was what the very first thing I talked about, that on organization unit is the your business entity where your price list and everything are tied. So this is the default one. And if I open this default resourcing unit, let's say this is the name. Um, a cost price list is attached to it. I haven't added it right here. That's fine, but I can attach a cost price here. If I try to attach a sales type of list, it will show an error. So if I try to attach sales, I think it will show an error. Mm. Oh yeah, my cost prices was already there, and when okay, so it didn't populate on time. So my cost price was already there. And I tried to add a sales, right? So that is where it showed me the error that the prices can't be associated. It should be of type cost. So let's go inside this cost. What do they mean by type cost and type sales? So now on price list, just this is again a differentiation from the sales type of price list, that they have a context here of type cost or sales. So because this is cost types, I know that all the prices I'm going to be putting in are of type costs. And the resourcing unit, which is I think US contracting unit. If I just sort this, I had these two rules. Again, these are lower prices, right? From what was billed. For the sales price list, the project manager rate was $180, right? So again, coming back to the price lists here, this was the sales price list. Again, if I go to the role prices, and again, if I sort all the way just to locate my resourcing unit, see it was $180, right? So that's why based on the 180, it charged for 2 hours. That was $360. So these three aspects we had set, contracting unit, also talked about the work hour template is where it's like a timetable, right? These are the available hours for you. You assign those work hour templates to your resources. And when you do that, the schedule board will reflect when is this resource available to work on. And then you can assign your projects or tasks to them on from the schedule board. And when they had to do the time entries, they can just select that, pull all my allocations from the schedule board, or let me manually do it myself, right? They recommended ways to pull it all from the schedule board, so that there's no mistake, and there's no differentiation, or there's no conflict between what was scheduled versus what the resource has built. So that's one aspect of it. Um, and the other things that I didn't cover was the expense entries. It's very similar to time entries. If you traveled for expense, if you had receipts, you can upload your expenses, and those can also go the similar way by the project approver approving those, and those going into actuals, and those getting approved and added to the invoices as well. So again, these are the some of the core aspects of project operations, or PSA. If you already are familiar with PSA, project operations, having now the connectivity with finance and operations with the extended setup. Of course, it's going to be quite a lengthy demo, but this is how the project operations light type of deployment is. And what this is taking you all the way from deal to pro forma invoicing, meaning the invoices that is for your managers to review before taxation and all the changes, right? These invoices can go to your accounting system. It could be anything, ideally finance and operations, and then it can come back and with an enriched invoice. So this was a functional overview. I do realize there are a lot of jargons or a lot of terms in this that might be new for people who are new to Dynamics 365, CRM in general. But if you have already worked to some extent, even functionally, on the sales or field service or customer service, those products or core CRM, you would be able to pick up some of these jargons. Again, there is a lot to cover, but for that, I'm always available on my social media platforms. You can, of course, search me up on LinkedIn and you'll find me. Happy to take up any questions. And I think we still have 5 more minutes, so I think we can just go through the chat to see if there are any questions. Mm,
Thank you very much, Priyesh, for that
yeah,
functional overview for for project operations. Often people get diverted purely on the configuration, but what's more important is the actual
yeah,
functional use case. And I
correct.
think what I like you've done today, Priyesh, is you've shown the sales cycle and
Yeah,
how the project operations is very tied to the sales life
yes,
cycle, which is exactly what we
yes,
wanted today. So
great.
there are quite a lot of questions actually in the chat, believe it or not. Let's look where we can begin. So I think Amit's
Right.
began by saying, meanwhile, Priyesh is giving the session below. So Microsoft keeps a separate application. So this is a question in relation to the difference between project operations and the other products. So we'll skip that for now. And then Henry is got a question about we are a graphic. Hey, Henry's got an excellent question. So he's actually got a real life business scenario.
Mm-hmm.
We are a graphic design professional services, and
Oh,
99% of our projects start in the morning and are delivered by night on the
mm,
same day. The projects are connected to accounts and contacts. We get daily projects from these accounts and contacts. The question to everyone is, would you suggest we use project operations or customer services sales for our daily project management for sales and invoicing purposes? And then the second question is, if we want to expand our usage for our support team
mm,
that purchases and maintains assets,
yeah,
do you suggest we go to Business Central Finance and Operations? So there's lots of loaded questions here, Priyesh, forgive
right. Yeah.
me. But yeah, I think that's the first
Yes,
question,
for this
really. Yeah.
one, sure, sure. For this one, reading the first question right away, what comes to my mind is, I think this is a strategic decision here. So I haven't talked about the licensing. The licensing is $120 per user per month for project operations. I think an alternative to this one, the first question would be using field service, because you can have a work order there, and your resources can also, again, not using field service in the it's a organic sense, but again, the resources can then they have assets as well. um, they have customer assets, and they can do time entries as well, which can end up on the invoices. I haven't explored that bit, but to me right away, if if project operations seems like it's an overkill right away, field service is another options if you want to stay in D365 customer engagement app side of things. And then again, I'm not a business central expert, so yeah, there are ways we can connect to your ERP platform. So some of the practices that we've internally done is either you use dual write for whatever is available. Apart from that, you can do REST API based integration and probably leverage Azure that way. Um, yeah. So, my immediate thought would be to look at field service and see if it fits the bill right away. If your project operations can be used, one day projects can be done, but it might seem a lot to then set up a project, then allocate resources and everything. It might seem too much for a day's work. Then I think work order on the field service side of things could do it. But then again, you would still need if you're a developer already, you would need some kind of changes to your field service in order to accommodate the time entries, because time entries is also possible on field service.
Thank you,
So yeah,
Priyesh.
there's an open-ended
Okay.
question. Yeah.
Thank you, Priyesh. So the next question by Rajesh is, can we have items and services in one project and make one invoice?
You can do items in the sense now, because I showed example of the professional services. You can, in terms of items, you can bill licenses, but I think items here is in different context. So I don't think so, because you have to have a separate contract for that. So no, that would be possible.
So
Um,
great. So for milestone invoicing, can we make the project invoice, or do we need to make an on account invoice? Not sure if they have this in D365.
whether you tie the project or not, I think I'm okay. Whether you tie the project or not, you can still create your fixed bid invoice. So it's account first approach that way. Uh, Make the project invoice or need to make on account. Yeah, it's mostly on account, because just the project won't end up being on the invoice. It's the invoice is derived from whatever is tied to the contract itself, and because now contract comes from your account, it's just considering the project. So for fixed, even if you don't tie a project to a quote line, if I just leave it blank and if I just mark the milestone as okay, bill it this time, it will. Uh, I hope that answers the second question too.
Okay, right. So I'm just scrolling through to see the other questions. There's lots of great comments in the chat here. Just looking, there is one question. I think
Seven.
the
Yeah,
final question is in relation to Henry, who's asking, we
the
have
license.
yeah, we
Yeah,
have 100 team members using Dynamics every day. Can we use the team member license?
they can. They can, if the purpose of them is to just do time entries and submit the time entries, they can use the team members license for that. For resource schedulers, for project managers, for management, they must strictly stick to the project operations licenses. Just resources billing time is fine on the team members license. They can do that.
Well, what a great way to end your session on some great news there. So fantastic. Thank you once again, Priyesh. So
Thank you,
Priyesh,
Raz.
please, a big, huge request is, could you please share your contact details in the chat?
I will just
Because
post this
that's going to
session. I'm
be invaluable resource to the community. So please stay in touch with Priyesh. He's got a really fantastic blog. So follow him on LinkedIn, Twitter, follow him on his blog, and keep in touch with Priyesh. Once again, huge thank you to Priyesh.
Thank you, Raz, again for hosting me. It was lovely. Thank you everyone for your time today. I hope this session was valuable. I'll try to, yeah, feel free to reach out. I'll leave my contact details here, and we all look forward to the rest of the couple of days at the Power Community. And thank you, and take care, everyone.